Burnley is most well known for its industrial heritage and the Weaver's Triangle, a modern name for an area astride the Leeds and Liverpool Canal that was once at the heart of Burnley's textile industry. At one time, Burnley was the cotton capital of the world, and 90% of the population was employed in the weaving trade. The following film took 12 months to make, and most of it has been shot in and around Burnley and the Lancashire area. I was inspired to produce this film because of my love for nature and to show people just what is out there and not a million miles from their own doorstep. Much of this film has been taken in Healdwood, which is situated alongside a busy housing estate less than 2 miles from Burnley town centre. Entrance to the wood is gained through one of several entrances. These pathways, although not much more than 30 metres in length, transport you from the housing estate into a world of natural beauty and tranquility. We start in early March with a light dusting of snow covering the ground, but after only a short burst of sunshine, it soon melts and then disappears altogether. The wood is classed as a semi-natural ancient woodland, and although a little naked in the early part, in the spring this will soon be transformed by many woodland flowers such as wild garlic, bluebells and snowdrops. Snowdrops are the first of the wild flowers to appear on the woodland floor. The shoots can be seen from late January, pushing their way through the soil along the river's edge. However, in Healdwood, they will not be in full bloom until late February. At the top of the wood behind the houses can be seen crocuses and daffodils. Whether these are original wildflowers or escapees from the houses that back onto the woods, I don't know, but they are beautiful. The river, Pendle Water as it's called, flows gently along the side of Healdwood. The overhanging trees make an ideal perch for the kingfisher. Unfortunately, I've not yet been lucky enough to capture this beautiful bird on film. One day, walking through the wood with my camera, I was lucky enough to have spotted this goosander with her young. It was an amazing sight and quite funny when one or two of the young tried to hitch a ride on Mum's back. A largely freshwater bird, the goosander first bred in the UK in 1871 and can now be seen on many upland rivers of northern England. There are many other water birds along the river, ducks, heron and if lucky the odd oyster catcher. This is what is known as the Grand Stairway. This leads you to the upper part of Healdwood. It's a steep climb that takes you from the riverbank to the elevated portion of the woodland. The elevated section of the wood is crisscrossed with footpaths. Although well trodden by the local people, these do not deter from the natural beauty of the place. Just to one side of Healdwood and beside the M65 is another small wood, which is home to a small group of deer. They seem to be there most mornings, and it's unbelievable to think that all this wildlife is only just a stone's throw away from a busy motorway and housing estate. Springtime in the wood is my favourite time of year. This is the season for the wildflowers to take advantage of the sunlight that is still managing to filter through the woodland canopy. The bluebells and wild garlic are the most abundant on the woodland floor. The perfume from both of these plants is quite overwhelming. The blackbird has been building her nest and can be seen scratching on the woodland floor looking for worms. The robin family are already busy feeding their young. Our house backs onto Healdwood and we get to see some spectacular sunsets. The branches and the leaves on the trees make a haunting silhouette against the beautiful red sky. The cherry blossom, sakura in Japanese, is Japan's unofficial national flower. It is so popular that festivals are celebrated in its honour. Japanese people believe the cherry blossom captures and defines all that is vulnerable about being human. The sakura season gives us timely reminder once a year that life is fleeting and time is precious. The trees have been offered by Japan as symbols of peace to many countries of the world. This avenue of trees was captured in Preston, just as the cherry blossoms were at their best. As you can see, the many petals that have fallen on the ground make it look like a covering of pink snow. Springtime is also a busy time on the farm, and here at Altham Hall Farm, the Barnes family are in the middle of lambing. With over 700 sheep to lamb, someone has to be on hand 24 hours a day, just in case of any emergencies. Sometimes there is a need to bottle feed, so everyone has to lend a helping hand, including Heather, Sam and Jack. The Barnes family are true farmers. They go back 4 generations. It's a busy life and each season gives them lots to do. Once the ewes have finished lambing and all seems okay, they then have to be shipped out into the fields to make way for the next batch of sheep. And to do this they use a quad bike and trailer. goats out in the fields, then it's just a case of checking daily to make sure that all the newborn lambs are doing well. Pendle hosts one of the most scenic waterways in England, the Leeds and Liverpool Canal. It is now more than 200 years old and at 127 miles long is the longest canal in the country. This section of the canal is known as the Weaver's Triangle. It was once at the heart of Burnley's textile industry. If you explore the area, you can still find many buildings from the days when the town led the world in the production of cotton cloth. A largely unbroken sequence of weaving sheds and spinning mills enclose the canal, making this one of the finest surviving Victorian industrial landscapes in the country. The Straight Mile, which is known as one of the 7 wonders of the British canal system, was the most difficult section to construct. It carries the canal 60 feet above the town of Burnley. On the canal you can see the local bird life, and here I have managed to capture the ducks, swans, Canadian geese, the moorhen, and even a short clip of the reed bunting. Through the latter part of the 20th century, the leisure potential of the canal began to be appreciated, and boatyards, marinas and boat hire companies have developed along the canal, which is now very popular with boaters, partly for its stunning scenery and partly for the long lock-free sections that are ideal for cruising. Close to the canal are the Prairie playing fields, a place which you wouldn't give a second glance to, but if you are prepared to look carefully, you will find that the edges of the pitches are bursting with lots of beautiful wild flowers. Throughout the summer, it's unbelievable just how many varieties you can find. They pop up in the most unusual places, and as you can see in the film, the abundance of wildflowers attracts a variety of insect life. Pendle Hill. Dominating the landscape for miles around, this magnificent hill at 1,831 feet is not quite a mountain, yet big enough to inspire all those who see it, including George Fox, whose vision from the top of Pendle Hill led to his founding of the Quaker movement. The top offers breathtaking views across the Forest of Bowland, the Yorkshire Dales, and on clear days, the Lake District. The historical relevance of Pendle Hill gives it a bleak and eerie quality. It was used as a burial ground in the Bronze Age, and a 7,000-year-old burial mound can be found on the top. Most recently, in the 17th century, the events which led to the hanging of the Pendle witches took place. The evidence against them was hardly conclusive, but nonetheless a considerable mythology has grown up around the witches, whose memory is perpetuated by a hilltop gathering each Halloween. At the base of Pendle Hill, you will find quite a few picturesque villages, some of which I managed to film. Pendle's towns and villages are steeped in history. Some have associations with Pendle witches, others bear the stamp of the textile revolution. One thing they all share are the meadows and windswept moorlands of Lancashire hill country. Newchurch is attached to the Pendle witch myth due to the legend that is the burial place of one of the witches, Alice Nutter. She is buried in the churchyard of St Mary's Church, and on her grave you will find a skull and crossbones carved onto it. Downham is beautifully situated beneath Pendle Hill and is one of the most delightful villages in Lancashire. Completely unspoilt, the village retains an atmosphere of a time gone by, and because of this is often used by films and television companies for period dramas. We now look down on Sabden village, and with the moor in the background you can see just how colourful the heather looks. From there we travel over to Upper Ogden Reservoir and look down onto Barley. This is a wonderful place to walk. This is Fell Wood, a man-made plantation of conifer trees. There are only 3 species of conifer which are generally recognised to be native to Britain. These are the Scots pine, juniper and yew. The path through this wood takes you into another world. It's hard to believe that you are only 30 minutes from the centre of Burnley. Back in Heelwood, it's summertime and the trees are now looking their best. You can walk along the riverbank and see just how thick the undergrowth has become. This tree reminds me of a childhood story called Up the Faraway Tree, and below on its trunk you will find a love heart that has been carved in its bark. I wonder if the sweethearts are still together. This tree has become home to the starling family, but all the hard work was originally done by the woodpecker. Talking about the woodpecker, this pair have made a new home a few trees further down, and they are being kept busy feeding their young. The grubs and insects needed to feed the young are in abundance at this time of year. This great shot of the foxes was taken in Rochdale alongside an industrial estate and an old fishing lodge. The red fox is a very adaptable carnivore and has the largest distribution of any wild land mammal in the world. As with all carnivores, it often comes into conflict with people. These foxes have been fed on a daily basis for quite some time, so they have become used to coming up close to the units. And when I saw just how many came down to feed, it was an amazing sight to see. When watching them take the food, it was incredible just how much they could pick up in one go. They must still have been feeding their cubs, as 1 or 2 disappeared into a small wood carrying the scraps of food. Down on the farm, all the cows and sheep are now out in the fields, the lush summer grass helping the cows produce an abundance of milk, which will be used in the production of dairy products. It's another hectic time for the Barnes family, who are busy cutting the grass in the top fields. This will be turned into silage and used to feed the dairy cattle during the winter months. As the tractors go around the fields, the rabbits make a dash for the edges. A social animal, the rabbit lives in colonies in warrens. It is possible for a doe to produce a litter of 3 to 6 young every month. Along the side of the fields, among the abundance of nettles, can be seen the colourful foxgloves. The foxgloves look lovely and the flowers are very nice to look at, but behind the elegant-looking herb lay a real danger. Foxgloves are poisonous and should never be eaten or used domestically. Even touching foxgloves can cause rashes and headaches. Deer are also disturbed by the tractors and make a run for safety into the woods, which runs along one side of the field. Once the grass has been cut and rolled, it then has to be gathered from the fields and taken back to the farm. This takes a lot of skill, as one driver needs to keep up with the other, so the grass is directed into the trailer. The trailer, when full, is taken back to the farm, tipped out and then piled up in the barn and left to ferment. Contractors brought in to assist with this work have only a short time to complete the task before moving on to the next farmer. The farm buildings are not only used by the animals, but in the summertime are home to the swallows. These beautiful birds travel all the way from South Africa every year to raise their young. Swallows arrive in the UK in April and May, returning to their wintering grounds in September and October. I filmed this family right up to leaving the nest, and everyone survived thanks to the hard work of the parents. in the calf shed, I found a little wren's nest. She had used the straw from the floor to line the nest and make it warm and dry. Again, she was kept busy coming to and fro with insects and worms. It is the commonest UK breeding bird, although it suffers declines during prolonged, severely cold winters. The river flows through the land of Altham Hall Farm, and it has quite a varied amount of wild birds, some of which come back to nest every year, including the swans. Swans form bonds, which can last for many years or even for life. Their diet is composed of roots, tubers, stems and leaves of aquatic submerged plants. I went back in July to film the swan family, and as you can see, the cygnets have grown considerably. Along the riverbank can be seen many holes. These are made by the sand martins. These small birds come here in hundreds, flying all the way from southern Africa just to breed. Parts of the river have large banks of pebbles, and quite a few birds nest here. If you look closely, you can see the eggs of the little ringed plover. The little ringed plover is a small wading bird with distinctive dark markings around the head, black bill and yellow eye ring. Being a freshwater wading bird, the little ringed plover inhabits shingled riverbanks and lakes. It will nest in hollows in the ground surrounded by pebbles. To obtain these shots, the camera was set up amongst the nettles and left running to ensure that the shy little bird was not disturbed. I returned after a few days only to find that the birds had hatched, but they are so well camouflaged you can hardly see them. The nestlings are delightful balls of down. Active from birth, their long legs carry them at high speed over the shingle. The parents readily fake injury to distract attention from their young, which can fly at around 3 weeks. The other bird I filmed in the same way was the oystercatcher. They are a large, stocky black and white wading bird. It has a long orange-red bill and reddish-pink legs, and they nest in the pebbles, and their eggs are very well camouflaged. On this shot, I did focus my camera a bit too close, but I couldn't risk disturbing the bird, so I had to just leave it running. Autumn is a time for the trees and shrubs to bear their fruit. This harvest is very important to the survival of many birds and wild animals who will use it to see them through the cold winter months. In one corner of the prairie playing fields is an area that is not well manicured as the rest. This marshy area seems to be home to an abundance of spiders. One morning I noticed that there had been a heavy dew which had stuck to all the cobwebs, and when the sun came out it made the droplets look like strings of pearls. It is reported that there are 2 million spiders to every acre of meadowland. The amount of spiders' webs seen here may well prove the experts correct. In one of the gardens that backs onto the playing fields is a flowering bush, which seems to be particularly attractive to all sorts of insect life. Predominantly attracted are the variety of beautiful butterflies. Autumn is the time when the trees provide us with a wonderful display of rich colours as their leaves begin to die off for the winter. These trees filmed in Queen's Park provide us with a perfect example. Healed wood is now in autumn time, and I love to walk through the crisp leaves that have fallen onto the woodland floor. There is even a smell that you can connect with autumn. The fallen leaves provide a perfect environment for the many varieties of fungi. Fungi is the name given to a strange group of living things including mushrooms, toadstools, moulds and thousands of other weird and wonderful things. Mushrooms often suddenly appear as if from nowhere. This is probably why there are so many magical tales surrounding them. Have you ever seen mushrooms growing in a circle? People used to think that fairies, elves and goblins danced the night away on the circular dance floor within these so-called fairy rings. We are now in Townley Park, and here you can see that autumn is in full swing. Townley Park is the largest and most popular park in Burnley. It has a long history as a private estate, with much of its current landscape the result of work carried out in the late 18th century by Charles Townley. The park and the former family residence, Townley Hall, were purchased by Burnley Corporation in 1902 and have been in public use ever since. It is widely and affectionately known locally as the jewel in Burnley's crown. Townley Park is a great place to see the trees in autumn and to spot the cheeky squirrels that come down for a few peanuts. At Crown Point, high above the town, stands Burnley's exciting new singing, ringing tree, a unique musical sculpture in the form of a tree bending against the wind. As the wind blows, it produces a low and mellow hum through the pipes, which are tuned so that they do not disturb the wildlife. A path from the nearby car park leads to the tree, with its fantastic views from Westhorpe Moor to Pendle Hill, and looks down on the town of Burnley. We are now at Heysham and overlooking the Bay of Morecambe. On a clear day, you can see over to the Lake District. Morecambe Bay is an important wildlife site, with abundant bird life and a variety of marine habitats, and there is a bird observatory at Walney Island. The bay is also notorious for its quicksand and fast-moving tides. It is said that the tide can come in as fast as a horse can run. It is particularly infamous due to the 2004 Morecambe Bay disaster, in which 21 Chinese illegal immigrant cockle pickers drowned due to the tide. St Patrick's Chapel, Heysham, is a ruined building which stands on a headland above St Peter's Church. Dating back to the 8th century, it is undoubtedly one of the oldest religious buildings in Lancashire. Nearby are 6 body-shaped coffins hewn out of solid rock. However, the bodies and stone coverings were removed many years ago. In 1977, an excavation took place in and to the south of the chapel, which dated the site at the late 6th or early 7th century. The buried skeletons uncovered were dated as no earlier than the 10th century. A further excavation took place in April 1993 on land below the stone coffins. No human bones were found, but more than 1,200 artefacts were recovered, which showed that the site had been occupied about 12,000 years ago. Sunderland Point is in Lancashire, in the northwest of England. It is an isolated peninsula of land formed as the River Lune flows into Morecambe Bay. Sunderland Point was once a thriving port, and in the 18th century, ships from the West Indies and North America docked here, plying their trade in cotton, sugar and human lives as part of the slave trade. In 1801, no fewer than 76 ships, each of more than 160 tons, were trading from the port. At Sunderland Point you can also find Sambo's grave. We don't know much about Sambo or even his real name, but he was presumably the personal servant of the master of a slaver vessel sailing the notorious Atlantic Triangle. Sambo died at Sunderland Point around 1734, but because of prejudice operating at the time, could not be buried in consecrated ground. His body was interred in land that was once behind the inn, but is now a remote spot on the wind-swept shore with nothing between him and the vast sea that brought him from his homeland so far away. It's winter time on the prairie, and the heavy frost that came the night before has covered all the grasses and plants with a thick coating of ice. Even the fox can be seen trying to get warm in the winter sun. In our garden we always feed the wild birds. We put peanuts on our decking so it will attract the jays, and that way we can leave the camera outside and hopefully get some good shots. We sometimes get a visit from the odd pheasant who comes into our garden to see what he can find. The winter snow has now arrived in Healdwood, and the wood takes on a whole different look. The beauty of the place can be quite breathtaking. Not only does the snow make the wood resemble a picture from a Christmas card, but it also creates a sense of tranquility, and as you walk along its paths you notice just how peaceful and quiet everything is. In the winter, the canal also takes on a different look, and the views across to Pendle Hill can be quite stunning. Just take a look at these shots taken down at Altham Hall Farm. On the day I took these shots, an eerie mist came over the land and transformed the place into a magical landscape. The mist rolled in and out, one moment clear and the next moment hiding the view. Each time it lifted, I wondered what would appear. The last shot of winter and the end to my film comes from Townley Park. Just look at Townley Hall, how fantastic it looks in the snow, and the woods at the back are just as spectacular. I did manage to get some shots of the cheeky squirrel and of course the little red robin, so traditional for this time of year. My father also loved nature, and during his retirement he wrote several short stories which reflect his feelings for the outdoor life. So in remembrance of him, I have selected some short paragraphs taken from a few of his pieces, and I have used them to end my film. Autumn Beauty. Some of the leaves have fallen to the damp ground, and like the grass of the moors, they have the same yellow tint around the curled edges. But stop and gaze upon the leaves in the trees. They are the same colour of what man desires most, gold. So we make our way back to civilization, better in body, sweeter in mind, and more appreciative of the things around us, which are free to store with the other jewels of memory, the beauties of nature, and particularly autumn. Winter Wonderland. The day began very cold, and the sun was partially hidden by a misty cloud. As the day progressed, the snow began to fall like silver leaves out of the sky. I looked out of my bedroom window over the fields towards the church, surrounded by a small wood. The scene was one of unbelievable beauty. The feeling of exhilaration as I walked through the bright, crispy snow took me back to childhood dreams of fairyland. Alone with nature, we make our way to the moors, where the gentle breeze turns your mind to laughter and a broad smile covers your face. The stream ripples along with gay abandon. The clouds join in. Their reflection in the water makes the depths the same as the heights, and even the stones deep in the bed are like newly washed, pink-faced babies who are ready to smile at anything and anyone with desire to be part of this magical world. I hope this film has made you aware just how wonderful nature can be and how we must protect this amazing planet for future generations to come.